welcome to another edition of the Umoja Circle. Today is part two of a discussion that we left off in the last show, part one. But before I go on, for those of you who are new to the show, this show is an African-centered talk show which corrects errors where errors are found and introduce facts where we find that so many people are working on fiction. My name is Keith Smokey Johnson, and the topic of these two shows was based on a book by a scholar, Dr. Joy DeGruy, called Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. And in the first show, we started off talking about that aspect of the trauma that we had to deal with as enslaved people. Not for a couple of weeks, not for a year or two, not for even a decade, but for hundreds of years. We're talking from 1619. It was longer, but I'm talking about in English America when the first enslaved people were brought to Point Comfort in 1619, in August of 1619, on the slave ship, the White Lion. And that started our time here in hell for many people. You know, no matter how we are taught in a peripheral way in a cerebral way, when we talk about enslavement in sometime in the history books, it's given a cerebral type of definition. But many people who are of African descent have a, let's say, master's degree. I don't care if you don't have a high school diploma, but when it comes to walking this earth as a black person in this skin, you have a better PhD, my guest is who I'll introduce in a minute, understanding of what it means to be black in America. And this feeling that we still generate, this distortion that you hear some of our kids say when they use the N-word, or how we utilize our women in these videos and all these other types of behavior patterns, how we function when we're approached by police officers when we are stopped at a traffic stop. Those are all symptoms of what that book is saying, of the slave syndrome that had been passed on from generation to generation based on how we were treated by the dominant group, which is the dominant white group. And you know, we have to have this understanding and this topic in order to heal ourselves. We're talking about healing on this show, but we first got to face the trauma, and that's what we're doing. And with me again to continue this conversation is Dr. Uchenna Umeh. She's a 30-year clinical pediatrician who has board-certified pediatrician, like I said, with 30 years experience, who was got a residency at Howard University Hospital. She had her own practice for 15 years in Lancaster, South Carolina. She also went, after that, she went into the Air Force as a lieutenant colonel, where she was a commander at Maxwell Air Force Base, and here at Wilford Hall at Lackland Air Force Base. She is an international author and an international keynote speaker. And she is the CEO of what you call herself, Dr. Lulu's. Yeah, Dr. Lulu's. She's the medical director and CEO of Dr. Lulu's Youth Health Center. And with that, I'd like to welcome back to the discussion that we left off, Dr. Umeh, or Dr. Uchenna Umeh. Yes. Or they like to call Dr. Lulu, whichever.
That's fine too. My favorite name is Mom. Like
yeah. We were really into this discussion in the last show, talking about the generational effect of trauma. You could be a teenager who was raped at 13 or 14 and still be traumatized at the age 50 and 60.
Absolutely.
You could be a soldier in Vietnam in 1968 Tet Offensive and still having night sweats and panics. We talked about what happened on 9/11 when you see people falling out of buildings and dropping out of buildings, and you could be in California watching it on TV, and that indirect trauma affects you. There can't there, and also the fact that there is any there cannot be one. I don't think there's one student of the mind. And when I talk about student of the mind, I talk about psychiatrists or psychologists who will say that traumatic experience does not have power over the individual. Nobody with their right mind would say that. There have been studies done on the collective trauma of the Jewish people during their Holocaust, right? There have been studies done on the collective trauma of Native Americans, you know, in the 1800s when they were sent to these Indian schools, taken away from their parents. But when you, if you, Dr. Umeh, went to, say, go to Bellevue in New York, psychiatric department, or one of the psychiatric department in Texas, A&M, or New York University, or UC Berkeley, and you asked them to do a research on the effects of enslavement on us people of African descent, there is a visceral pushback.
Yes.
Okay? There is this cognitive dissident response. I mean, why you want to bring that up? Why you want to? That was long ago. Why is it that they'll accept the fact that trauma is generational?
Yes.
We talked about epigenetics.
Yes.
But why is that?
Well, I think it's guilt. I mean, I'm just going to come out and say it. It's guilt. I mean, you touched on it last time, the fact that even the jailer
we left
wears a
about
uniform.
that point.
Yeah, even the jailer wears a uniform. And in this context, the jailer is the man who's enslaving somebody else. You yourself, your mind has to be in the shackles as well. So we're all in it together. And it's a mindset, but it's real. If you are a jailer, your mind is not free because you have somebody else enslaved. It's a very simple fact.
And
now,
go to church.
accept it or not.
And you go to church every
know,
Sunday. You know, and you know that what you're doing
is wrong.
How could you whip the skin off a black man
and then go to church
and then go to your children and try to have
eat dinner?
Yeah,
eat dinner. And then there was the one guy who they fried him and then ended up splitting his body parts, and then they kept pieces of the body part on their mantelpiece. This is stuff that is not even in the movies. Like a movie that's like that would not even sell. But this is what happened.
It'd be rated XXX.
It happened in reality. When you want to go and really look at the atrocities is the only way I can put it.
Got to speak truth.
And yet they want us to just say, oh, business as usual. Oh yeah, we play basketball and we play football and therefore it's okay. Look at what's happening to Colin Kaepernick. It's a systematic.
Thank you.
Systematic to this date.
That's what racism is.
To this date.
We touched on it in the last show. A lot of time we try to equate prejudices with racism. And that's not because it's something that was accidental. There is a technique that came out in the 1970s. It's called semantic infiltration. Semantic infiltration is the process in which you're negotiating, you're talking to another person, and you want to outsmart them. So you just throw out certain terminologies into the conversation, hoping that they start using your terminologies
and eventually
get away from their ideas and process.
With your ideology, that's
so this thing about reverse racism or you are a racist when we talk about prejudices, that's
same.
And it was done deliberately. Because I'm hearing even people that look like us who are talking about, oh, I'm not a racist, and they're having these crazy semantic infiltrated conversation that makes no sense. Racism, prejudice is a natural thing.
Everybody has some.
Look, I use this example, Dr. Umeh. I used to eat chocolate ice cream. I used to like Haagen-Dazs, okay?
Okay.
So that means there's all other kinds of chocolate ice cream. I have to be prejudiced against Bluebell and all these other things in order to
enjoy your Haagen-Dazs.
So prejudice is part of who we are.
Inside,
You better be prejudiced when you go out in the woods and pick mushrooms to know which one is poisonous, which one is hallucinogenic, and which one is easier to eat.
Yeah.
So our natural but the trick is they're trying to, because they don't want to talk about the post-traumatic slave syndrome and the atrocities that were done and the system that was established by law. We did not create slave codes.
No, we did not.
We didn't put law that says based on a woman's pregnancy, her children would be a slave for life. And you know where that came from? In England, there was a law that said that people, since it was agrarian, that if you own a sow, okay, and the piglets roamed into your neighbor's farm, and he claims them, there is a law that says that piglet belonged to the sow of the owner. You see what I mean? And they transfer that idea
to humans
through the woman. So, you know, they control the black woman. So if you were born into slavery, it's based on your mother being a slave, then the slave owner owned the offspring, just like the farmer owned the sow. If we don't understand that history and that craziness.
That's craziness is so the thing about it is, I just think how much effort it took to be a slave owner.
You had to.
You have to be constantly thinking, oh my God, they're going to run away. Oh my God, like one of your chickens is going to run away. Oh my God, let's go find the chicken. So much effort that was put into all kinds of ways. Let us do this too. Let us frustrate them. And then when they freed the slaves, then they started lynching them. Let's lynch them. Let's burn down Black Wall Street. Let's frustrate these people that you brought by yourself. They didn't ask you to bring them.
Nope,
you
kidnapped.
brought them.
Basically
literally kidnapped us.
Yeah.
Which is another day's story, because the truth is the rat inside that tells the rat outside where the cheese is. But we're going to leave that alone. But regardless, the mindset of someone who can take somebody and put them within 18 inches of each other for months on the water for months.
18 now. Everybody's seen a 12-inch ruler and knows how wide that is. It's about this wide.
Yes.
Okay, add 6 inches.
That's it.
So this is the space that enslaved person was kept for 3 months on a slave ship. Imagine somebody my size, and then your sister like Dr. Umeh, and we're on this position, chained in a dark, dingy slave coffin.
But my question is, how did they even, oh my God, my slave masters, God bless all of you guys, my slave ancestors, excuse me. God bless all of you guys.
To survive that.
I can't even imagine. You need to use the restroom. You need to use, number one, you have an itch, you have a scratch. I'm just thinking, me and my hair, I'm constantly, you can't do any of that. That will kill me, because it will break my spirit.
How many millions?
It will break my spirit. It will break my spirit. It will break my spirit. I can't even think.
And they did that deliberately to break the spirit. They didn't want the trauma of slavery, and that's why we're talking about these issues. You can't have that kind of trauma. Not only before you even went on those coffin ships, you were kept in a slave dungeon on the west coast of Africa. And I've talked to, I haven't been into any one of them personally,
castles,
but I've talked to people who have been, and I've seen films of people who, American blacks who went over there, and every last one of them cried.
I knew you were going to say that.
Cried.
You cry because
the genetic memory.
Yes, the girls, and then the girls right in front of their brothers, their uncles, their fathers, they're raped systematically.
To show you to have no
power. To show you
power.
they have no power.
Exactly.
I cannot even imagine the mindset of a slave. I keep saying it, of a slave owner. It takes a lot of guts. And then you tell me you're a Christian, and then you tell me Christianity is good? How do you reconcile that? When I turned 50, I said, you know what, to hell with it. I will talk to my own spiritual being out there, and that's it.
Yeah.
And you cannot do anything about it, because it doesn't make sense. It does not add up that I come to you, I steal your kids, and I give you my religion, and then all of a sudden my religion is the good one.
And
then my religion told me I could justify beheading your child, and the slave owners' wives will flog a child to death.
A 9-year-old,
and then go to church tomorrow and sing hallelujah.
And that's the,
I don't know whether
crucible.
This show is X-rated or not. I don't want to say some words.
That's the crucible that we survived. And when you have 246 years,
I'll make it 300, baby.
Well, I'm just starting. I just want to say I want to bring it up, because 246 years of legal slavery, 1619 to 1865, and then we got this thing called the 13th Amendment. Trauma goes on a piece of paper called the 13th Amendment does not change the trauma. Then you have another 100 years of apartheid, Jim Crow segregation, state sanctioned, from 1865 to 1965, and you think that a civil rights bill is going to change the trauma?
Can I ask you a question, though?
Sure.
Isn't there, are they not hunting our boys down today?
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm leading up to.
You know,
that's what I'm leading up to.
Forget 300, because it's not even true. Today, they're hunting our boys.
That's where I'm leading to.
Today, Sandra Bland is not alive.
We are dealing with the
results
today.
It hasn't stopped.
That's where I'm leading to, exactly. After all that trauma and not having any kind of, you have a shooting in a school today. What's the first thing they do? They bring counselors, right? So you have 246
After
years.
the fact.
Yeah, but you have 246 years of enslavement, and then
there's no counseling.
There's no counseling. Oh, you're just free. 13th Amendment, 14th Amendment. Everybody's proud of that. Then another 100 years of trauma, of KKK, Ku Klux Klan, and like you said, sundown towns and black codes and all these things that traumatize you. You go fight World War I, you come back home as a soldier, you get lynched. Even as soldiers being sent to France to fight in somebody else's war, we were given over to the French. So all these type of internalized,
and the Belgians will cut their hands.
Yeah, and even we can't forget that colonialism was no different than slavery here. So even our brothers and sisters on the continent also had to deal with that. You got to imagine that you can't have millions of people being depopulated from the west coast of Africa, from Mauritania all the way down the west coast of Africa. Thousands of square miles of depopulation, not thousands, but millions. And it doesn't have an adverse effect. And then being colonialized on the continent. So this trauma goes across the diaspora.
Yeah, because we're looking at it, and this is a very important point you made. We're looking at it like, okay, the slavery and all the hardship was only the children that were brought on the coffin ship, which I like that word, that phrase, coffin ship. Forgetting that even the kids, and I use the word kids, or the children of Africa that were left with Mother Africa, were systematically colonized. And today, we're suffering the effects of that. Nigeria is such a rich country with natural resources. Africa is a blessed country with all kinds of resources, and what they've done is effectively turned us against ourselves.
Thank you.
In Africa, turned us against ourselves in America, wherever. When you mentioned what they do with the videos and how they sexualize women, it is stuff that's they've taught us that we are not good. There's nothing good about us.
Exactly.
And when my hair, if I choose to wear my hair like this, then why are you going natural? Your hair is not good. Your hair is frizzy, it grows weird. Why can't you just live and let live? And now they make us feel like, yes, my hair is not good. Give me a wig, give me a weave, give me eyelashes, give me something so I can look better. No, it's within. But they've stuffed us so much. Even in the motherland, we don't know what we're doing. Even in the motherland, there's anarchy. Countries are against countries, homes against homes, because of what they did. It's hard.
And that's what the purpose of us talking about this book, because that's why Dr. Joy wrote it and called it post-traumatic slave syndrome. It's all across the diaspora, across America, across the Caribbean, on the motherland. This 400 years of enslavement we're still affecting, because the people, like you said, we've given, to tell you how we still carrying some of those slave thoughts. When we call ourselves by the N-word, we hear young people in videos who gave us that name.
That vocabulary, is what you said,
Yeah, it was a slave man. So when you call yourself that name, you are copying the name given by the dominant group.
Yes.
That is internalized oppression.
Yes.
When you carry the mind of the slave owner, you are internalizing oppression. If the whole environment is hell, one day of hell could traumatize a person, right?
Yes.
But you're talking about 400 years, to this very day
To
of
this
hell.
very day, yes. And I would like for us to not even limit it till tomorrow almost, because I don't know that my children's children will see an America where black men
It's
are
not gonna
truly
happen
free. My
overnight.
children's children, I'm talking about my grandchildren, will see a world where, an America where black people are truly free.
Live up to the
to
words.
be themselves.
Yeah, yeah.
Really. Because if you're a black male, they want to get you. They want to get you, they know what to do to you. I watched Lisa Ling on CNN.
Yeah,
She talked about the LA County Jail or something, where every single night as we speak, hundreds of men are brought in, 98% of them black. Hundreds. Did you know that something called ACEs, which is
Yeah.
yes,
Adverse childhood
experiences.
experiences.
Did you know that incarceration is one of the experiences? If my uncle is in jail, if my father is in jail, if I'm in jail, all of that is major trauma. If it happens to me before the age of 18, as an adult, it's going to come back as cancer, heart disease.
The stresses.
Yeah.
The stresses.
Suicidal attempts, obesity. So
Yeah.
we start looking at these things. So which really came first? Is it the cholesterol or is it that? Yeah, the mindset mess up
People don't
from when I
realize-
was a child.
People-
ACEs
yeah.
is effects that happen to a child, traumatic effect. There are 10 of them. Divorce, physical abuse, sexual abuse. Do all these things sound like racist, our slave masters? Yes. All of those things add up. Emotional abuse. All of those things, watching domestic abuse happen, somebody beating up your wife and rape and all these
when
things.
you were 5
yeah.
years old, 6
and then,
years
Yeah, and then you grow up and then, no wonder African American, bringing it back to the study from 2 weeks ago, no wonder African American children have a higher rate of suicide today.
Low
Because of
self-esteem.
Yes.
You know,
It
trauma.
adds up. It
Yeah.
adds. It is no. We're not making anything.
There's no
up.
disconnect
There's
from
not-
150
yes.
years
No.
ago to this day. Every black man who's watching this show or black woman tense up when a police car goes behind them.
Non-stop, including me.
That's trauma.
I wasn't
do.
even born here.
You
I
start
wasn't
taking on
even
the
born here.
behavior.
Yes.
Yeah. What we
Because
call
it
each
doesn't
other-
matter. Because
when
they'll
you
shoot me first, and then it's, oh wait, she's a lieutenant colonel. Oh, my bad.
No,
and then
let
you
us
get a
see-
slap on the wrist,
when you
and
have
maybe even a hug from the judge.
oh my goodness, I know what you're talking about in Dallas. When you have a social definition of your hair, what I mean is, how many black people out there in the television, in this television show, looking at this television show, heard somebody in their family said that baby has good hair? That's a
Oh,
moral.
my God.
We put a moral definition on hair, okay? And that good hair has to what match the slave
he has
owner.
to slick. He has to be slick.
It
and,
has to that's
you
a
have good-
slave that
that's
came out of
You know, where
slave
did that
Arab.
word? I never knew that. Where did that word? That's where that phrase came from. Because I did not know. I just hear people say you have good hair. What is that?
That came, well,
Because
that's
where I'm
what the
coming
slave
from,
used
all
to
of
say.
us have the same kind of hair. But I hear people say good hair. I'm like, I've never known where it
That's
came
one
from.
of those post-traumatic slave syndrome.
Vocabulary.
Because remember I told you about internalized oppression. When you internalize things, you become that which is powerful.
Yeah.
And if you come in a society where the God is white,
Oh,
where
yeah.
you're taught that everything that was good happened with white.
I love that
When-
part because
when
Jesus supposedly came from Israel.
but that's all we were
Israel,
taught.
are they white?
Yeah.
No, but no,
Anya,
honestly, are they even white?
But that's the
But
craziness.
that's the thing.
That's the
I mean,
craziness
doesn't
of
make any sense.
But
if
it works.
Jesus really did walk on the surface of this earth, and he came from Israel, he's not white. He was never white.
We know
And
that.
yet, you know what I mean? It's like, oh my God.
Post-traumatic slave syndrome. That's the power of that book. That's why I brought this discussion to the viewing audience, because we still have symptoms of that came out of the distortion of who we are. You had to distort those people's idea of
Mindset,
themselves.
yes.
It wasn't something that was done for 300 to 400 years. And you think that we could just walk, and the fact that we're walking upright.
We're doing very well. We're doing very well. Like a high five for us to still be coming back, the comeback.
But
kid.
there's still processes in us that cause from the trauma. When there was that 12 years of a slave movie,
that movie, I couldn't even watch it.
that's what I was just going to say.
I couldn't watch it.
That's the
I
trauma.
Can't, I watched Roots. I watched Kunta Kinte get beaten up, and to this date, I cannot get it from
That's
my mind.
post-traumatic
The big,
slave
huge,
disorder.
ginormous whip that they used. I don't care if it was acted. The fact that it happened.
Genetic memory.
Oh my God.
Remember we talked about epigenetics?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, the thing is about DNA, and I want people to understand that who think that, you know, let's just say that the mind of a people is carried from generation to generation
And thank
culturally.
God for that.
Culturally.
God for that.
Just like
it's important.
just like the DNA is carried biologically from generation. The culture frames the thought process of a people. That's why you have a culture. And Wade Noble said one time, and I always remember this. He said that the original generation of 1619, okay, their actions become their experience, right? And that experience becomes the history of the next generation.
Them,
and then when that experience and actions is passed down without informing them, generation to generation to generation, then those actions become part of the culture.
I love it.
Part of the culture.
That is so true.
So that's how these survival techniques of always downplaying our black men.
I know.
Because when you're a mother in slave land,
so true.
in order for you to when you have a smart black kid and you're worried about him being sold, or you got a smart, brilliant black girl and you don't want her to get raped, and you got master coming and said, well, he's growing really good as a good old buck. Oh, he's not that.
Yeah.
And there's a thing called social learning theory, right? Which means that the child learns by observing the parent. And if the parent is always downing them, and so that, like you said, you got kids today who are suicidal, low self-esteem. That's why Carter G. Woodson started Black History Month, because he saw this in the 1900s, early 1900s, this effect of post-traumatic slave syndrome, and we're still dealing with it today. And we better. All psychosis comes out of secrets, right?
Yes.
Right? So when you as a counselor, when you're counseling kids, you have to bring out what they're holding inside.
Of course, you got to peel the layers. It's like onions. You got peeling.
And if we don't, do that.
And a lot of times it starts from the parents. I want to know, what are you saying every day to your child?
You got to learn the history.
Hearing.
You got to
what
learn
is
the
going
history.
on in your home that's making your child wanting to?
You cannot function unless you talk about the history. That's why we in the show are bringing back in the past to talk about what's going on in the future. You can't understand the complexity of today unless you go into history. And as usual, we're running out of time. I want to thank you, Dr. Umeh, for coming on the show. And we will be doing this again. So until next time, peace, hotep, bye-bye.